Well, hello, hello, hello. Really great welcome. Hello to everybody. I'm just looking at the comment tracker actually, so I'm somewhat distracted, but we've got a lot of excellent comments already. And I'm really delighted to have two people with me today. First of all, the inimitable Sandra Watson. Big shout out to Sandra. Sandra's here supporting me through the Hangout, so thanks very much, Sandra. And a very, very special guest in Cara Brookins. And absolutely delighted, Cara, to have you here. And I know you've taken quite some time out of a very, very busy schedule to be able to join us today. So many, many thanks. You look absolutely fantastic today as well. So I've got to say that.
Thank you.
And really welcome to Successfully Social, Cara. So, do you know, it's really funny, Cara. I was kind of trying to think of a really snappy introduction. And then I thought, you know what? Cara does so many different amazing things, and some of you, those of you that have already seen the trailer, will have seen those different things. So, Cara, we know you're an author. We know you've got a number of best-selling books out there. We know that you're a mom. We know that you're a motivational speaker. But I thought, rather than impose an introduction on you, I'd ask you, Cara, what are you all about? Can you tell us a little bit about what you're all about?
Well, now I feel like I'm all about chaos after that list.
Not at
I
all.
I do tend to do a lot of things. Of course, by day I program computers, so there's the tech element. But my passion is definitely my family and writing. I have 4 kids,
Mhm.
and they're amazing, and then the writing, which is where I really sink in and enjoy life.
Okay, and Cara, we'd love to explore a little bit about the writing, but I know it's been a bit of a journey for you, and maybe we can touch on that a little bit to an extent. So I know you've written a number of different types of book, and currently you're working on something that I know is going to be quite amazing. But you've written a mixture of books, haven't you? From teen fiction to adult fiction to more recently you're moving on to psychological thrillers. So do you have a particular favorite? Is there anything that particularly motivates you as you move through?
You know, my favorite book is always the one that I'm currently working on. And I think that will always be the case, and that's probably really a good thing to stay motivated on it. The early works were historical fiction, and they were middle grade and young adult. And I really enjoyed writing those, but now I feel much more comfortable writing the adult psychological thrillers, as well as the women's comedy. And I feel like I'm in a really comfortable place bouncing between those two. It's not what an agent or editor wants to hear. They want to lock you into a single genre. You're a bit more marketable if people know exactly what they're getting every time they pick up one of your books. So it sounds a bit chaotic from the standpoint, particularly of an editor, but I think writing a psychological thriller, you sort of get in a dark place.
Mm.
And you can hang out there for 6 months or maybe even up to a year while you're writing this, and it's hard to stay there for that long. And when I'm done with that, I want to laugh.
Yeah.
I want to have that light-hearted women's comedy type novel to write. And then after spending a year there or 6 months where you're kind of maintaining this energy of ready to drop the next witty line every few pages, that's sort of exhausting to maintain that energy, and it's okay if people die again. So
I love that. So this is going to be a classic sort of comment from Cara. It's okay for people to die again. I'm going to jot that one down, Cara. Shortly before I dial,
not sure that's what I want to be known for, but
yeah. Where's that 911? I'm just gonna make a quick call if you don't mind. But, I mean, I find that quite fascinating actually. A couple of things that you've just pulled out, or I'm just pulling out from what you've said. And I never knew this. So editors, from what you've said, want to lock you into a particular genre or style. So that's kind of
certainly.
interesting. And
Hmm.
then from a creative point of view, I guess that's okay if you want to stay in that particular style.
Hmm.
So, people might just only ever write crime fiction or only stick with science fiction or historical novels. But clearly for you, Cara, you see a need to move between different genres. Have I understood you correctly?
Certainly, I think it's obvious just in the number of different things that I like to do in my everyday life. From, like I said, programming to hanging out with the kids to gardening or flying a drone or building a computer, whatever, all those different things. I I like to do a variety of things. I really get bored if I do one thing for too long, and I even get bored hanging out with the same characters. I just finished writing a trilogy, and I prefer writing standalone books. I didn't know that until I wrote a trilogy. But yeah, I get tired of those people, and I'm ready to hang out with someone else. Now, I don't feel that way with my friends in real life, I should say. I enjoy hanging out with them endlessly. But yeah, I just like that variety of being able to jump, between vastly different things. And with every different book, particularly if you're jumping between genres, it's a different way of seeing the world. It's a different way of answering questions, and you're getting this vastly different perspective of life, and that's fun. It's really fun to see through someone else's eyes.
Yeah, Sandra, you're looking as though you might be poised to ask a cracking question. So what are you thinking, Sandra?
I was thinking of the similarity between what you just said, as far as hanging out with your characters, that it's very similar to hanging out with people in virtual social media, and whoever you're hanging out with is a different part of the world many times, so you're getting to talk in different ways, you're getting to experience things in different ways. So you became a virtual person long before social media probably was as popular as it is now. You probably started that very young.
I think writing is very much like that you're hanging out with the different characters, but it's actually more of an intimate level than it is on the social media, because you are that character. It's more like an acting than it is a communicating, because you have to see through the eyes of that character, and you have to find their voice. And everything that they say has to sound like something they would say. Everything they do has to be something that this character would do. So you are, in essence, becoming that character and hanging out in their head.
Do you find it difficult when your book is done to stop being that character in your mind?
No, because I don't think that I feel like I'm that character, in my everyday life while I'm writing it. I think it's very easy to, if I'm reading, editing or reading it, to slip back into that person because I know them so well. It can be distracting if I've had a large block of time, like if I've been writing for 8 or 10 hours in a row, and then I get up and I leave my house maybe to pick up a kid or something, and everything's a bit foggy. It's like I've been living in this other world, and almost as though that world becomes more real than the real world. So you are really pulled back and forth between a couple of different realities. Yeah, but in a fun way, not in a frightening way or in a crazy way. It's by choice, and you're creating that reality.
Now, Cara, this is quite an interesting one, because I've read a couple of your books and I've really enjoyed them. I haven't. A real pleasure to say that. I'm also looking forward to the third part of your trilogy. Actually, before we get into the detail of my question, can you just tell us a little bit about your trilogy? I know what it's about, but for the benefits of the audience, can you perhaps share a little bit about it?
Sure. The trilogy is Time Shifters, and the first book is Mark of the Centipede, and it's about a young boy who travels millions of years into the ancient past. And he has to find some artifacts and help save the world. And there's a Time Ranger from the future that's trying to stop him. So it's very much a survival story. In the first book, it's very much primitive jungle survival. And the second book has a bit of city as well as jungle survival. And by the third book, you'll find out, Sean, it's very steampunk and city survival. But you'll see there's a theme there. These are survival without the zombies. But yeah, a lot of fun because I got to build a world, even though it happens here on Earth. It happens on a time that sort of predates our fossil record. So I got to create, flora and fauna. I got to create creatures that may or may not have existed, and paint them whatever colors I wanted, as well as create tribes of people. So it was a lot of fun to build that world.
Now I know that you, just from conversations that we've had outside of this HOA, that you deal with your books and then you move on to the next project. But one thing that's just occurred to me as you said it, and it's kind of related to that, is you mentioned survival. So you've got maybe survival is a bit of a mode and a bit of a theme, because your new book And I don't want to steal any of your thunder or go into any detail that would be unfair before it's published, but your new book has elements of survival in it as well, albeit for a different audience. So how would you contrast the two?
Well, actually, I would say that is a theme. I listened to David Morrell, who's a good friend and a spectacular author, and one of the first times I met him, he said that every author has some sort of an underlying theme that will appear in every book they write. And he said, it could take you 20 years to figure out what that is. And I said immediately, oh, I know mine. And he said, no, you don't. I said, yes, I do. I'd never thought of it before, and this was prior to actually writing the Time Shifter series.
Sure.
I said it's survival, everything I've ever written.
Interesting.
Even the very first book I wrote, which was a historical fiction set during the Great Depression, was about a family surviving through the Great Depression and trying to find food. And so I definitely think that's a theme. And I can find elements in it, even though it isn't necessarily as obvious and strong in some of my other writings. It's in everything I write, so that's my theme.
So interestingly then, Cara, survival in the context of the Time Shifters trilogy is survival couched in terms that the teenage audience for which that was designed, young adult teenage audience will understand, it'll be accessible to them. But then, of course, I know you've written some adult books already, and clearly your new book, Rise, is going to be adult themed. Is that still the working title, Rise, Cara?
Yes, that's still it. Who knows what it will end up being, but it's currently Rise.
Okay, so I'm sure Sandra is equally curious. How do you make the shift from thinking about survival and the bigger themes, looking at it from an adult point of view, as opposed to the themes that would be accessible for teenagers, or is it one and the same thing in your head?
I think it's very much the same thing. I think that if you try to dumb it down too much, thinking that you're talking to a younger audience, that it will become patronizing. So you really try to have the same, not only physical survival elements as well as psychological survival elements. The context is certainly different when you're writing for adults, but the underlying themes are all the same. And I think that when I write for young adults, the biggest difference that I feel is I feel a bit more of a responsibility. I feel more of a responsibility to them, that I have to have a moral, that I have to teach them things, that things that they have to end up all working out quite well. I don't feel that as much when I write for adults.
Okay.
I kind of feel like you're all grown up and you can handle the truth. And I think that's why I enjoy writing for adults more. I feel that freedom of a bit more honesty. I don't feel the need to sugarcoat anything.
That's really interesting. So, again, Sandra, you look as though you might have some thoughts around that. So Cara's not sugarcoating. Cara quite rightly says that we can all handle it as adults. What's your view, Sandra?
I find that interesting, and I wonder. Well, I can understand, the why you feel that way and everything. I was watching an interview with an author the other day on the internet, and I don't even remember who it was, but he said, people ask me, where do I get my ideas for stories? He said, I'd like to be able to give them a real set way on how I do it, but it always makes me wonder. I mean, I'm listening to you talking, and you're going from young adult into adult, and you prefer writing for adult, but yet you still write for young adults, so there's some kind of a thing that's pulling you in there to do that at times, to write for young adults. And then it's also, you said they're kind of on the dark side, some of them, and it's like, wow, why? Why? What made you get into that? Because you're such a happy person, and to go to that part of it just fascinates me.
So basically, where ideas come from, particularly the dark ideas, is what you're asking?
Well, I guess, yeah, from your personality, it's like, you can look at some of these authors that write some of these really gruesome things, and just the personality, it's almost like, I get that. But with you, I don't get it. Because you're really a happy person.
But I think that writing doesn't necessarily, again, I'm becoming someone else when I write these. And you're exploring all of the what ifs and the possibilities, and you're exploring the dark sides of yourself as well as the dark sides of things that you've seen in other people and the dark sides of things that have happened to you. So certainly my life has not been simple. Dark things have happened. I have been in a situation as a child after my parents were divorced where we were starving. We had no food. If it weren't for the free lunch program at school, the one meal I had every day, I would have starved to death. So I think that that's where my element of survival comes from, that primal need to just have the basics of food and shelter that we didn't have. So that's part of the exploration there. Now the darker things come from other points in my life. I was a victim of domestic violence, so I've seen the very dark side of human behavior and how bad things can turn. So I think every writer is asking questions. And they're trying to find the answers to these questions. What if you take this type of person and you put them in this situation? How will they handle it? How will they get out of it? And those are the questions you're asking. And you want to know the answers as much as you hope a reader will want to know the answers. And where you come up with those ideas, it can be a bit, often for me, it's maybe a bit of something I hear on the news or that somebody says, and I think, oh my goodness, wouldn't that be a great character? Now, what kind of a mess could I put them in? You want the person who's the most ill-equipped to deal with a situation, to be in that situation. Then you have a story. So, they come from all different places. I have literally a notebook of probably close to 100 stories that I hope I live long enough to write, and they're novels. A lot of writers tend to write short stories and then write some novels. Mine are all novels. I don't like to write short stories. They come to me as fully formed novels. So I can just pick one and start writing at any given time. But and then I'll hear news articles and things or something somebody will say, a quote, that I will go back to that folder and go, oh, that would be a great part of this book. Let me just drop it in that folder. So I keep things very organized with ideas, but they come from everywhere.
Cara, can we park that, because I really want to revisit that, and also I'm very conscious of the fact that I don't want to intrude on any things that you'd rather not share. But in some ways then, what you're suggesting is that some aspects of your novels reflect real life experiences that you've had. So again, tell me if I'm treading on places you'd rather not go, but in what sense are those experiences informing your current novel, would you say?
Oh, in a huge way. And I had this thought that I'm gonna take a quick sidetrack and then we'll get back to it. I have with the Time Shifter series, when you said they're from my own experience, I haven't traveled millions of years into the past, but after I posted a blog post about time shifters, I got a promotional opportunity from a travel agency in Japan that wanted to pay me for my blog post as long as I could prove I had gone on the journey myself. So I had to turn them down. I was tempted, but I had to turn them down, and I didn't take their money. But so that one isn't based totally on personal experience. But the current novel is, I had tried to write a memoir over about the last 5 years and failed miserably at it. I have written nonfiction for newspaper, and it did front page features. But when I tried to write about my own life, I found that I was sugarcoating things. There were so many things that I had to not tell the truth about to protect people, because you're writing about your own children, your own family, as well as strangers, and because I was just leaving a situation of domestic violence, you're dealing with these people who hurt you, and to put all of that in a memoir, it's dangerous. It can be, dangerous for you legally. It can be physically dangerous, and just emotionally dangerous to throw all of these people out there. So every time I tried to write this memoir, I really failed at it, and I had a great agent who tried to sell it on proposal and failed because it was really poor writing. And I, about a year ago, had the idea that I would write it as fiction. But I couldn't find a great way to do that. I still wanted to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that in calling it fiction was the only way that I could really tell everything that happened. And this past December, I was on a panel down at Heather Graham's writing conference in New Orleans.
Excellent.
And had about 2 hours of sleep a night for 3-4 nights in a row, as conferences always go. And as I was driving back, it came to me the way that I could put it together and still keep it true. So that is the book I'm writing now. And I have all of the true events of what happened through the domestic violence situation, as well as my family's reaction to that, and that was that we built a house, and my kids and I built our own house from the ground up by ourselves, and I incorporated all of that into this fiction piece, as well as I incorporated the domestic violence and some other bad things that had happened, but instead of highlighting a single individual, I combined several individuals into one, and that became the antagonist in the novel. So every major event in the novel is true, but the timeline is fictional.
Yeah, that's really quite fascinating, and thank you for your honesty. I appreciate it's not always easy to divulge these things, with an audience. So what you've done in essence, Cara, is you've blended some of the elements in terms of what would have probably been a single person into, or you've taken elements of different people.
Correct.
In reality, it was a single person, and also you mentioned the house as a theme. Now I know a lot of people saw the promotional trailer for this particular hangout. So just to lighten the tone for a minute before we dip back into Rise, tell us a little bit about the house building, because that's quite an extraordinary thing to do. A mom with a day job who's writing books, who's got 4 kids, suddenly decides for whatever reason that you're going to build a house. And I know that wasn't plain sailing. So can you share a little bit about that, Cara?
Yeah, the decision alone to do it at the time seemed like just a perfectly natural decision. We needed a place to live. We needed it to cost less than our current place to live. And we also needed to do something as a family, because after leaving domestic violence, we were really beat down. Our self-esteems were destroyed. And we had really pulled inside of ourselves rather than together. So this was a case of we needed something profound, so building a house seemed like the most natural thing to do. And
as it does.
It did to me at the time. In retrospect, not so much. But, but there was no part of it that was smooth sailing. From trying to get a loan to buy the construction materials, which people thought I was absolutely nuts. I found a piece of property, I found an acre that I purchased, and we were able to buy the construction materials, but didn't have enough money after buying that to pay anyone to put it together. So we knew once we started, we were all in, and we had to build the whole house ourselves. And when I say ourselves, my dad came down 3 times from Wisconsin and helped. My mom was here at least 1 weekend a month to cook food for us and to help watch the youngest, who was only 2 at the time. I should say my kids at the time were a 17-year-old girl, a 15-year-old boy, an 11-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old boy.
Amazing.
So there 4 of them, but they weren't the most able work crew. And being a pasty white programmer, I wasn't, anywhere near a construction worker. But we Googled everything. We watched YouTube videos of how to frame a house, how to dig a foundation, and one little bit at a time, we put a house together. So yeah, smooth sailing. There was none of that. There was regret here and there, but there was also a sense of camaraderie between the kids and I, and each little step along the way that we felt a bit stronger, that we knew it was big.
See, it quite fascinates me, because I'm sure, sadly, in terms of domestic violence, it's not as rare as it should be, and I guess other people might go through that process in terms of the thinking, but something will stop them. And I know it wasn't easy from conversations we've had offline as well as what you've just shared, but there's something about Cara Brookins, isn't there, that makes you think, right, I'm going to do it. It can't all be from a point of, I was going to use the word desperation, that's not the word I'm looking for. It can't all be from a point of wanting to escape. You must have some formidable positive energy within you, Cara. Is that a fair comment?
I think I'm very stubborn. Once I decide to do something, even if I suspect maybe it's not the wisest thing to do, if I've decided to do it, I will do it.
Right.
Whether it comes from I'm going to write full time or I'm going to build a house,
Cool.
whatever it is, once I decide that I will do something, it's hard to stop me.
Strange. That doesn't seem to be very difficult to believe, actually, listening to Cara. Somehow that kind of comes out of the screen. Now, again, I can see Sandra's quite keen to come in there. Sandra, amazing story, isn't it? What are your thoughts?
Well, here. I, I think that I can empathize a lot with what you've said. I've had similar things in my life, and my mother was an alcoholic from the time I was very small, so I learned to be self-sufficient, if you will, and it seems to me like you did that too. And the stubbornness, boy, I understand that totally. And it seems like that thread there is part of what kept you going and still continues to keep you going. I mean, even now that your children are growing up and everything, you're getting into another transition, but it's not going to stop you from doing exciting things, I can tell. And at the time, they don't all seem exciting. I mean, sometimes you look back and you say, wow, I don't even know why I did that. But then you can look around at your home now and it's like, okay, this is home, this is great. And I understand that. I mean, it's out of desperation. I mean, you did use a good word, Sean, because when we are desperate, sometimes that's what shows our true nature. And you are a survivor. I mean, that's obvious, and you say it with a grin on your face and happiness. There's a lot of people would look at what you went through and they would become a victim in life from the very beginning. They'd say, well, poor me, poor this and everything. You just used everything and turned it around and got everybody in there working, and my gosh, it's incredible. I mean, your story is not one of anything other than hope and resurrection.
See, it's interesting, Cara, because I'm guessing people may not know this, but I first connected with Cara on Twitter, and one of the things I really like about Cara is that Cara does these amazing things, but has a tremendous sense of grace about her. And I know perhaps there's a little part of you that might feel slightly uncomfortable with what we've just said in terms of the praise, and we're going to get the flags out in a minute and go, Cara, and all that sort of stuff, and you'll probably twitch uncomfortably. But you really shouldn't. But I guess the point I'm coming to is, and Sandra's put it well again, is, a million people will think the same thought, sadly, but majority, 90%, won't take the steps you're doing. And it's not to say that you enjoyed doing those steps all the time. It's not to say they were without hardship. But I think for me, the extraordinary thing is, with the 4 kids, yeah, there may have been an element of desperation, but you still did it. And you're sitting in an amazing room in that house that you constructed now, and it must feel great. I mean, what does the house represent for you now, Cara?
It's really interesting that when we finished the house, it was such a major thing to be done with it that I had the idea that we'd all have this huge just connection to the house, to this place.
Yeah.
That this house would mean everything to us as a physical object. And of course, right after we finished, I had, my oldest daughter was graduating from high school, and she moved to DC for a while, then to LA, and my oldest son has moved to Alaska for a while, and now he's down in Denver. So, kids are moving all about, and they still definitely feel this connection to the house and a sense of pride. But very quickly after we finished, within weeks of living in it, it was astonishing how much it was never about the house.
Right.
None of this was ever about the house. It was about the process. It was about the way that it brought us together. And now I have this, 3,500 square foot house, and it has 5 bedrooms, and there's me and an 8-year-old, and my oldest finished school today, or my oldest that is home with me, which is my youngest daughter. So, she will be moving on. So we have a huge house with a couple of people in it. And I occasionally say, someday I'm going to live in a little cabin up in the mountains. And people are just astonished that I would leave this house after everything we put into it. And And while I love it, I
Of
appreciate
course.
it, I enjoy it, I don't feel an overwhelming attachment to this place. I feel an attachment to what we did and who we became and what it meant to each of us, the way that it empowered us, so that my kids aren't afraid to go live in Alaska for a year and a half, to go live in LA, DC, to travel anywhere or do anything. They're fearless. So it gave us what we needed without the place being relevant at all.
Yeah, this is quite extraordinary because I really love what you've just said there. It's less about the bricks and mortar and the fabric of the building, although naturally you're proud of it, but it's more
Mhm.
about the process and how you've enriched your kids. And what a great lesson there that, you know, at the young adults and you younger son, Roman, whatever they do in their lives, they'll have that heritage, and whenever
Right.
they come against the blocks and the challenges that we all face, they're going to have that backbone of confidence, aren't they, as a result of what you've done. And that's a tremendous gift, Cara. So I really get what you're saying. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was accomplishing the impossible. You know, it was building a pyramid. It was coming across something that we didn't think we could finish, and that everybody we spoke to told us quite plainly we couldn't do, and we did it.
You
So,
did it.
yeah.
Fantastic. So you've incorporated the house building into your new novel,
Yes.
Rise, and obviously you've incorporated the domestic violence into the novel, and you've already said that you've made the character out of an amalgam of different people. Are there
Correct.
any other themes that actually come up in Rise, Cara?
Yes, and the way that I fictionalized this is I took the events that really, when I start to tell people about the house, people always ask why. Why did you do this? And of course, it's easy to say domestic violence, but it's difficult to understand the trauma of living with that for many years. So I took events that happened over many years of time before we built, and in the book I have them happening while we build the house. And so there's a tiny bit of a supernatural element in
Mm.
tying these elements together. Because I have two different timelines, the timeline of before we built and the timeline of while we were building, that I'm marrying together. So rather than having everything happen in memory, they're happening simultaneously. But there's a bit of a supernatural meditation element to it as well. And I think that adds to the empowerment of it. So, but the
Sorry.
people in it are all very real. It is, you know, there are four children in it who are very much my children's personality, 100%, and I am very much myself, although I have a different name in the novel.
Sure. I mean, again, I've perhaps got a little bit of an insight into this, but for the audience, how difficult is it then, where you know, as a human being who's been through these very, very difficult circumstances, you're going to have dealt with them and perhaps partitioned them and locked them away as a matter of survival. But as an author, you've kind of got to
Mhm.
reconnect with them, and not only reconnect with them, but make them live for an audience. And so you've got to access what must be quite painful memories. How do you go about that, Cara? I'm really curious about that.
Well, I'm about 145 pages into the book now, so I'm still learning how to do that. But it was a huge process, especially right in the beginning, because the way that I had dealt with all of these events before was to really just not look at them.
Right.
This was the past, and I'm a very forward-looking person. I'm always looking ahead. And so I really did compartmentalize them to the point where they were sort of locked up. So to access them on a very intimate level, very detailed level, like you were saying, was new and difficult. And initially I found that whenever I talked about the novel with my children, instead of saying I or
Mhm.
you when I was talking about them, I would use the characters' names. So I
Right.
think that that's the way I did it very early on, was even though they were real events and they were real memories, they're happening to somebody else.
Mm.
They're happening to these characters. And so I started out dealing with it that way, and as I've gotten further into the novel, I think that I've learned to deal with it in what ultimately is a healthier way, in that reliving these things, I've had to, I think, let them out
Right.
and be able to talk about them more comfortably and probably process them in a healthier way than just tucking them back. And there are a couple of scenes that some are more difficult to write than
Of
others.
course.
but I discovered that the things that are the most difficult to write are the things that I hadn't talked about, which is sort of a clue that talking about it does help. So as I talk about it more, and as I write it and edit it and listen to, I listen to voice recordings of myself reading the book, as well as my phone or my computer reading the book to me as part of my editing process. The more that I hear these things, the better I'm able to not only understand them and feel less emotional about them, but I think I get a better perspective in that I can help other people who are going
Yeah.
through this, because I'm looking at it as an observer more than a participant. It's letting go of that victim.
I'm sorry, Cara. I mean, again, there's two thoughts that have come out. The second element I'd like to explore, which is that you're looking at it more as an observer rather than a participant. But also, one thing that strikes me is writing. I've never written. I mean, I've written, but not to the degree that you do as a published author. But I guess it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because as you re-anchor and reattach and process some of this stuff, then do you find that it causes you to want to re-edit certain passages you've already written because you almost get more in touch with stuff that you've already written, or once you've written it, do you just tend to leave that chunk of material and move on? I'm just curious as to how it works.
Well, any writer spends very little time writing compared to the amount of time you spend editing. Okay. So whether this book or any other book that I write, I spend a great deal of time editing. But I think that it is true that the further I get in the book, the more honest I'm able to be. Mm-hmm. So that I think as I go back to the early sections that I might be adding more detail to them. Especially in the final edits, by the time I get all the way to the end of the book, because I suppose this is a wound that I'm slowly peeling open, sure. And by the time it's fully exposed, and so that it can heal better, that the beginning might take on some more detail, and I'm not there yet. So I don't know for certain, but I do edit as I go along, especially if I'm stuck or I'm having trouble writing a scene. I'll go back several chapters, and I'm adding and moving things around.
Okay, I mean that's a really good answer. We'll come on to the fact that, and I really love it, that another motivation once you've completed it is that this will be a book that will be of help to people, and people will read this and take something from it, although that may not be the main intention of it. But again, Sandra, I'm looking at your image here, and I guess you've probably got some thoughts you want to throw in. Are you still there? So, where's Sandra? She's still there.
Oh. She's disappeared from my screen.
Oh. I don't know where she's gone. Okay, no, she may just have disappeared. I don't know quite what's happened there. Hopefully Sandra will be back with us shortly, but tell us a little bit about the hope element. I guess that's not the major reason, or is it the major reason for writing it? What are your thoughts, Cara?
It's funny, the major reason for writing it is because so many people kept telling me I should.
Right.
And people constantly hearing the story and telling me, you really have to write this book, you have to write this book, and you sort of get tired of hearing that. And so at some point I decided I better sit down and write this book. And there wasn't a lot that I felt I had to gain other than having another book out there. It was definitely, I have to write this book because there are other people in this situation or similar situations who need to see the other side, who need to see that you can come through it. And maybe some methods, maybe building a house isn't the proper answer for them. Most likely it is not. But just that doing something large and profound is very important for a couple of reasons. First, because it fills your full mind.
Right.
And your mind is so cloudy, and you need something that will fully sort of take over and allow you to re-envision who you are and what you're capable of. That you're not weak, that you're not a victim, that you're strong and stubborn and you can do anything. And so really that, I would have to say, is 100% the reason I'm writing it. Because for me, it's mostly unpleasant. The writing of it is not fun.
No.
It gets easier as I write it, and I anticipate that that will continue. But it's not fun to hang out with those characters. It's not fun to hang out in that time frame. If you take, the worst thing that has happened to you in your life and spend, hundreds of hours thinking about it, it's not enjoyable. So I very much feel, pressured to hurry and finish this, mostly because I want to stop hanging out there. But it does become easier, and I feel like there is a purpose. I feel like had I had this book when I was going through the situation, or even just right on the other side of it, how much it would have meant to me to know this is real and this is survivable, and I am not alone. Other people have been through what I have and worse, and here's what you can do with it. So I really hope that that is the main, not only reason for writing it, but the main outtake from readers.
Yeah, so really, you painted the picture for me where if I were the victim of domestic violence, I'd clearly enjoy it from the point of view of being a work of fiction, but there'd be other elements as well where I could connect with it in terms of a sense of hope, if you like, and a sense of certainty that I could get through things. So do you have? I know this is you're probably going to kill me for this question because it's the worst question anyone can ask any author. Do you have a sense of when you might finish this one, Cara? When we can rush out and go onto Amazon and buy our copies?
Well, my deadlines are always unbelievably unrealistic. I give myself, 30 days or so to write a novel, and then I try really hard to meet it. And they're always impossible to meet. My original goal was to finish it by the end of May. I'm not going to make that. I still hope that I will finish it by the end of June. That's still a tall order, but I hope that I can finish it by the end of June, at least the first draft sort of thing. And then I have to sell it. So as far as when it will be available, I hope I can find a publisher right away for it. But, the Time Shifters, that was 9 years in finding a publisher.
Wow.
So I wouldn't anticipate this takes quite as long. But, yeah, there's no guarantee in writing unless you've already sold it.
Okay, so again, that's really my naivety. So you finish the book, but then there's quite a length of time, isn't there, between, or there can be, between completion and actual publication. So that was quite news to me.
Actually, if I immediately find a publisher who buys it from me and works with me to edit it and publish it, I would still anticipate that to be a year after the completion time.
Wow. Okay. So, Cara, in a minute we're just going to change the tone a little bit. I don't know where Sandra's gone. Actually, we seem to have lost her. Perhaps she's going onto Amazon as we speak to just see if the pre-order copies are on there. But you've got some other. We've sort of touched on the Time Shifters trilogy, and we're looking at your current novel, Rise. But I know you've got more out there than that. Do you want to share with us anything about any of your other novels at all?
Well, the ones that are available for purchase are the Doris Free, which is set during the Great Depression, and that's for middle grade students. And I have Gadget Geeks, which is also for middle grade, and that's about a boy who dumpster dives for electronic parts and builds robots. The Time Shifters trilogy. And there's a Treasure Quest, which is just a short story about a Civil War treasure. And then the other two that I have that are completed and now for sale, I have Little Boy Blue, which is a psychological thriller, and it's actually about a genetic abnormality.
Wow.
And I haven't sold that one yet. I'm hoping that will sell soon. That one's actually a lot of fun. That's one that I really love and have a lot of high hopes for. It's about a boy who discovers that his mother intentionally had children with a genetic abnormality so that she could secure a reality television show. So it was really exploring how far people will go for fame, and it's a dark novel. But I had a lot of fun writing that one. And I have a women's comedy that I am just finishing the editing on, but I've been sidetracked with writing the new book, so I keep not finishing the editing. But it's about voodoo. It's a women's comedy about a divorce attorney whose law practice is floundering, and she goes through her own divorce. And she accidentally introduces a voodoo doll to a client. And then her law practice takes off, and women are lining up for voodoo dolls that look like their soon-to-be ex-spouse. And, of course, they have to work a little bit, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. I'd love for that to be a series. I would like to write a bunch of those. They have great characters, a lot of fun with those characters.
So is there ever an occasion when an author gets slightly schizophrenic, Cara? So you move from, if you like, you move from the serious stuff of Rise, and then you knock that partition down in your head, and you move over to the voodoo themed woman's comedy. How do you do that? That's extraordinary.
Well, I think that's what's so much fun, is that you get to do all of these different things. That's what I enjoy. When I'm done with Rise, I would love to write a second voodoo book, because that's where my mind will need to be, on something a little bit irreverent and fun and light. So yeah, that's what I'd like to write next. Again, another one of those.
You know what? You've given me the perfect cue, Cara. Thank you so much. This is, let me just see if I can get this right. But those of you that watch the show on a more regular basis, if I can just pull this up, will remember that we do, at a certain point, we do something called Smash and Trash. Now, I'm cunningly trying to look for the logo for that, and at the moment that all seems to have disappeared, so maybe we won't put the logo on. But Smash and Trash, the idea of Smash and Trash, for anyone who's not watched the show before, is it's really about, just to change the tone a little bit, what's really rocked your boat, what's really made you feel good in the course of the preceding week or two, and the trash is what's perhaps been a little bit of a niggle, a bit of an irritant, something that you'd rather get rid of. So, Cara, I'm going to invite you to Smash and Trash.
And I forgot to prepare something, so I'm working right off the cuff here.
Very well.
No, but I do have start with the trash. You said, right?
Of course, please.
I have a trash that I have read recently on social media. Several different people saying things like, some people. And then they proceed to tell something that they disliked about someone and that they have unfriended them.
Oh, gosh.
And it's really, really a pet peeve for me. If you have something to say it directly and don't announce it to the world. So I don't like people taking personal, discussions, personal dislikes with people into a private setting like that, and simply saying some people or someone and simply taking their name out. So that's a pet peeve. And I had to think a while to come up with that. I tend to be sort of sunny the way I look at things, but
cool.
That I don't like. And my smash for the week today is, and I think I already mentioned this a little bit, my youngest daughter, Jada. It's her last day of high school. So this is my third child to get through high school.
Congratulations, Jada. Fantastic.
Yes. And I've gotten one through college, and one is in college, and they are just remarkable people. I love having adult children. I love spending time with them. I'm so proud of who they are. So, yeah, even though it's a little bit sad to see her being done with the whole high school thing, not a lot, because I already know from the other two kids how much fun it is to have those adult kids. So, I love it. I still have a second grader, so I'm not done with field trips and packing lunches yet. But there you go. That was a big smash for me this week.
And I hear you're not done with Minecraft yet either.
No,
I'm a big Minecraft fan.
I am becoming a Minecraft master.
Minecraft Jedi, Cara. Oh, well, that's cool. Thank you for that. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to start with my trash, but my trash is related to my smash. Now, over the last week, or just over a week ago, I had the pleasure of walking around a part of the UK that I was quite unfamiliar with. It's a historical, amazingly historical area of about 90 miles, where a wall was built by the Romans in AD 122. It's called Hadrian's Wall, after Emperor Hadrian. And it stretches across part of the northeast, only a small part, obviously, it's only 90 miles, but part of the northeast of the UK. And it was absolutely tremendous. It was brilliant scenery, amazingly good physically, where some days I'm sort of crunched over a laptop, and sometimes you just feel good to be out and doing some really good stuff. And it was tremendous. And what's more, I did it with a buddy of mine I've known since I was 13, and we had the good fortune of connecting with this amazing couple. So I've done the smash first, haven't I, Sean? After all of that, I've told him my smash first. My God, what am I doing? It must be the shock of Sandra leaving the show. But anyway, let's do the smash. Let's carry on with the smash. The smash was I connected with some brilliant people. It was a tremendous environment, and it was quite spiritual. And very, very enjoyable 5 days for me. And the trash, although I've done it the wrong way round, is related to that only in as much as, you come back, and I've got quite a convivial neighbourhood, but you kind of come back, and my energy levels were really high. I was feeling really good about everything, as I often try and do. And you walk out your front door in the morning, and you see your neighbours, and you give them a cheery wave, and you're feeling good because everyone's stuck together on the walk over Hadrian's Wall the week before, and out comes that, "How are you?" I shout, "How are you?" And the response is, "I'm all right, Sean. Yeah." Yeah, not, and you feel your energy going down. So I guess my trash is the power of language and people, even where they're quite positive people. What an amazing effect when people aren't manifesting. I don't know if I put that in the right way, Cara. I don't know if you follow me here, but sometimes the negativity that people have, or that comes through society, or watching the wrong stuff on TV, or whatever, it can be quite pervasive, and I don't think people really know it. So I don't want to overcook that. I'll bring it back to the Smash. The Smash was a tremendous physical experience, really quite a spiritual journey a couple of weeks ago, and with the consequence, I'm going to go off on another one in the next couple of months. But I really like yours too, Cara. So that was all good. So I guess we're in the sort of last 10 minutes, Cara, of the show, and I'm wondering if Sandra's had. I've just actually seen a comment from Sandra. So Sandra's computer has actually crashed.
Oh, no.
I think it was the excitement of the whole discussion, Cara, and what we were talking about. So closing, Cara. Obviously, I'm going to reconnect with Rise again, but just. There are going to be a lot of people who are really enjoying the show who want to connect with you further. So the first thing I would ask of you, Cara, is how do people connect with you if they want to catch up with you further?
Well, the same way that we connected is probably the best, which is on Twitter, where I'm CM Brookins, and I'm also on Facebook as Cara Brookins, and my website is carabrookins.com. So I can be found on all of those: LinkedIn, Feed, YouTube. I'm Cara Brookins on all of those, so it should be pretty easy to track down. And I spend more time than I should on them, particularly when I'm writing this novel that I avoid a little bit on occasion. And
I know that to be true, Cara. I've seen your tweets.
Yes, and every now and then I'll tweet, "Okay, now I have to turn this off," and then 5 minutes later I'll be back on there. But I try to be good. And I love the social media. I love the interaction. I love meeting people from all over the world,
sure.
and it's just amazing to see the different perspectives. So there will be a book about that to come.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think where that comes in with the sequence, Cara. So the voodoo comedy female novel Rise, the third trilogy in Time Shifters, publication of Little Boy Blue, and you've got to find time for this other book. That's typical you. That's
on the list.
That's why you're so awesome. That's absolutely brilliant. Okay, so people can connect with you across a variety of different social media platforms. You've also got a blog, Cara, if I'm right, haven't you?
Yes, and that's accessible through my website. On WordPress, but you can get through carabrookins.com directly to the blog.
Okay, and do you have a preferred means of contacting you? Quite open for people contacting you
any way, certainly, and you can email me directly through the website as well.
Brilliant. No, that's absolutely superb. So Cara, as we sort of move towards the last 5 or 6 minutes of the show, a couple of thoughts really. The first one is, well, first of all, I'm going to have to ask you, have you enjoyed the process of this? Because I think this is your first hangout.
Absolutely. This is the first hangout, and I love it. In fact, cool. You and I made my very first video Skype call a couple of months ago. Yeah, I had to actually acquire a camera and stuff because I never liked to see myself on camera, but you've softened me to it. So here I am, and I'll be doing more. I love it.
Yeah, well, this is it's my pleasure, Cara, and you're obviously a lot more photogenic than I, so I'm sure the audience will be really pleased with that. So when are we going to expect to see the first Cara Brookins hangout on air then?
I don't know. You're going to try to lock me into that, aren't you?
I did have a thought.
I'm going to do some more video diaries, which I've fallen down on. I started doing a writer's diary on YouTube, and had intended at the time to do one weekly and have failed. So I'm going to pick back up and finish that. I want to sort of chronicle the entire process of writing Rise. So when I'm done with that, I would love to host one of these and get some people talking.
Yeah, I mean, Cara, you've got so many things that you're doing at the moment. I guess you've always got to prioritize, haven't you? But I mean, the video diary sounds quite fascinating. So without kind of preempting a timescale, when you've got so many other areas to focus, what's the concept? You've touched on the concept of the video diary, but can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. I just had the idea that every novel is so different when I write it, but I still follow a lot of the same processes. And I have so many people ask me, I want to write a book, what do I do to get started? What's it like to write a book? So I wanted to just chronicle that as I was writing a novel from start to finish. You know, here's how I start to gather the ideas, and this is how I handle this phase, and just kind of through the novel share that. Now, not as though this process would necessarily work for somebody else, but if they start their own process and get stuck, they may have some ideas of some different things that they could try. And maybe even from a reader standpoint of just seeing what it is like through the different stages of coming up with a book, and how many months and sometimes years of a writer's life go into a book that you read in a few nights.
It's extraordinary, and as a reader myself, who gets swept up in whether it be fiction or non-fiction, you've really touched on an interesting point. I can read as a reader and enjoy that book, and then I put it down, and it doesn't occur to me, nor should it occur really, how much sweat, blood and tears has necessarily gone into the whole process. And in fact, until you mentioned it, I didn't realize that often the editing process is as long as the writing sometimes, which is amazing, really, isn't it?
Right. Well, we want it to appear effortless. You know, we don't want you to think we've sweated over it.
No,
we want
no,
it to
indeed.
appear effortless, and it just
easy,
appears on the bookshelf, and then you read it, and then we produce another. But that isn't the truth.
This is really unfair, Cara. You're going to think, God, he didn't say he was going to ask me this, but it just popped into my head. Do you have a favourite novel or book or work, or is it the what you're working on now is the favourite?
Yeah, favorite thing that I've written?
Yeah.
Truly, it's always what I'm working on now. Some I like more than others, and of course I learn so much through the process of writing that I'm always embarrassed by things that are in past novels, because I've definitely learned to plot better or to do dialogue better, and with each novel I learn a lot. So Rise, I think, will always have, hold one of those top spots. Because it's so personal. But other than that, yeah, I love whatever I'm doing, and so I don't know that I have a favorite yet.
Okay.
I have hundreds more to write, so maybe you'll have to ask me, 150 books into this, which one is then my favorite, and you'll get a better answer.
Yeah, I'm actually already putting that in the diary. So 10 years from now, when Cara's got another 30 books out there, I'll ask the same question. But Cara, we're coming towards the last couple of minutes. So I've really enjoyed this. It's been brilliant connecting with you, and thank you for your honesty and integrity in terms of sharing your story. And also, I know that many people watching the show will have been really inspired by. They'll have seen the promo video, and they perhaps will have looked at that and thought, oh, well, it was all easy. But you've been honest enough to share the fact that it hasn't all been easy, but you're still producing some amazing works and some great lessons you've shared with us. If there were, I always ask on these hangouts, if there were one parting message that the interviewee would share with the audience, what that would be. So Cara, if you had one parting message for us, what would that be?
I should have thought ahead on that. I didn't, but I think that it's always set out to do the impossible.
Right.
If you have a plan, a goal, a dream, and you know exactly how you would do it, then you're not thinking big enough. Your dream should seem absolutely impossible, and then you're close.
Yeah, I love that. So basically, what you're saying is, if it's so attainable, it's not really a goal, it's not a stretch. Right. Is that kind of where you're coming from?
Yeah, then you're not reaching high enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Stretch.
I wonder, is it fair to ask you maybe that's not a fair question.
Oh, sure, you can ask.
Okay.
I'm deciding how honest I'm going to be. No. Well, I had a goal a few years ago. I wanted to be a full-time writer. That was my goal. And then about a year ago, I realized I'm writing at least 40 hours a week. That qualifies as a full-time writer.
Definitely.
However, I'm still working my full-time job, so I wasn't specific enough in my goal, and that I wanted that to be exclusively my job that I was making a living at. And it really wasn't big enough. I mean, full-time writing 40 hours a week, that's not what I wanted.
No.
What I wanted, so now it's a dollar amount. I want to make this much a year with my writing so that I could do that full-time. And it's big. It's outrageously big, because if it weren't impossible, it wouldn't be any fun.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and in fact that is the essence of goal setting, isn't it? Not just the stretch, but I've learned over the years to be a lot more specific, and sometimes in not being specific I've actually got the outcome that I've actually looked out for, but because it's been a nebulous outcome, I've kind of got good things in terms of the goal, but I've got the more uncertain and fuzzy things as well. So I totally agree, and having left corporate life myself, sorry, that's not. Let me change that a little bit. Having left corporate life in my case, I found that in terms of the businesses I'm setting up, the best thing to do is be really, really clear on a tangible financial outcome as well as all the other outcomes. So I totally agree with you. And there we go. That's
my alarm to pick my son up from school, which someone else is doing today, but I failed to turn the alarm off.
No, Cara, don't worry. No, not at all. No apologies necessary. In fact, that's perfect timing, because it's bang on the hour. And it just leaves me to say, Cara, thank you so much. You've been absolutely delightful. Really appreciate it. I hope we can do this again, because I know that a lot of people who've been watching will have really gotten an awful lot out of this. And I guess there's so much more we could talk about. So Cara, many thanks. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. Wish you all the best in terms of Rise and Little Boy Blue, which you're looking for a publisher for at the moment. And if anybody wants to connect with Cara, Cara is on Google+. Cara is also very active on Twitter, and you can reach Cara on www.carabrookins.com, if I remember correctly, Cara.
Yes, that's correct.
As well as all the other social media platforms that you're actually on. So brilliant stuff. Cara, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing everybody on next Successfully Social. Thanks, guys. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.